Yeah, to be honest, at the beginning of the transfer portal, and honestly, all of these Colorado transfer portal cycles, it's right to be worried about the numbers that we're leaving. But as the transfer portal has officially closed, it seems like Colorado's doing all right, and they continue to add more players. So Brendan Marion actually said this on June 17th. Actually, yeah, this morning. So the same morning the portal closed, Brendan Marion, the new offensive coordinator, says, "We are not even close to done. Good morning." And after he said that, Colorado added 5 more transfers. 4 of them were for Power Four. That's how you get busy in the portal. I gotta be honest with you. Colorado has forced people to respect what they're doing when it comes to the portal, because when you look at the Power Four acquisitions, when you look at the pure number of acquisitions, they've replaced everything that they've lost and then some with some high quality talent. Like, you cannot be unimpressed about what's going on, and it goes straight into the fact of, look where they're ranked at for their portal rankings right now. This is from On3. They are the 16th ranked portal class, so that's above Mississippi State and South Carolina SEC teams, right underneath Clemson, right underneath West Virginia, who lost 44 players and only brought in 31. Whereas you see what Colorado, they lost 34 players, they brought in 37 players, and this number is basically like a composite of the average of the rankings that they lost. So they lost an average ranking of 68.32. Obviously, Jordan Seaton had a lot to do with that number being so high, and they brought in a higher level of ranking of player. That's what you like to see, especially with this amount of numbers. And I think it's so interesting because people were pointing out how many Colorado had lost when West Virginia lost 44, Mississippi State lost 38. Oklahoma State. Now, they did lose a coach, right? They lost 64. Florida State lost 34, only brought in 19. Wazoo, I think they also lost a coach too, lost 34, only brought in 7. So there's a lot of interesting situations to be brought out. So let's get into some of the portal players that were brought just today. So you had an offensive tackle, Leon Bell out of Cal. You had defensive tackle, Samu, I don't want to butcher your last name, but he's going to be an interior defensive lineman. He's like 375. He's a big dog. He was committed to Baylor, and he flipped his commitment. Then you got Paul Amadia from Lamar, Richard Young out of Alabama, and Jason Stokes, a cornerback. That's 2 cornerbacks just in this draft class, or this transfer portal class alone, out of Utah. So let's get into it. Brian Howell, who does a lot of great job reporting on the Colorado Buffalo, says Colorado has added 40 transfers. I'm sorry. So apparently On3 is wrong. They've added 40 transfers all in the last 15 days. By my unofficial count, has filled 76 scholarship spots for the 2026 roster. Hey, man, it might not look pretty to begin with, but it ends in a really good way. So let's talk about each of these new transfer portal players. So Alabama running back. This is Mr. Richard Young. I'm actually not too familiar with him. I've noticed something. You're going to notice something that Coach Prime likes a lot. He loves DBs. He loves wide receivers. More specifically with his running backs, he likes tall running backs. That's something that I've talked about last year. Running back, he likes tall running backs, and he likes tall corners too. Tall DBs in general. Tall DBs, that's more of a kind of where the league and football is heading to. But the tall running back thing is kind of a throwback situation, right? You got the 6-foot running back. I think a few of the running backs they had in the past, I think some of the true freshmen were like 6'2", 6'3". The other running back from Sacramento State is like 6'2". Like, these are some big, tall running back. So I think that's an interesting thing just to kind of look at for what Coach Prime is looking for in his running back. Then you go, and again, that defensive lineman out of Baylor who flipped his transfer. So Baylor defensive lineman transfer, flipped his commitment. Sorry, he flipped from Florida to California. He did to California to Colorado. He didn't flip from Baylor. He was originally from Baylor. 6'3", 375. He played in 7 games at nose tackle last year. So probably gonna have to slim down a little bit, but still really great to play on the interior. But again, I think what more people are worried about is the offensive line. And you bring a offensive lineman who previously was an SEC offensive lineman, then went to Cal. He's 6'8". That is a tackle if I've ever seen. There's some skyscrapers on this Colorado offensive line. They're 6'7", 6'6", 6'7". All these big dogs. Like, you like to see that. It's and I don't mean to inject too much of what I got going on, but back when I was playing high school football, like, you could tell when an offensive line was like serious by just their height, like how big they were on the line. I remember just that. I'm not sure if it's the same thing in college because everybody's big in college, but there's something about having some big skyscraping motherfuckers on the offensive line that you just had to look at like, wow, yeah, them boys about to get busy. Them boys about to get real busy. So you love to see that. Colorado's new transfer cornerbacks, just the cornerbacks in particular. You got Creed Thomas out of Notre Dame. You got Emory Floyd out of App State, who's a longer corner. Justin out of Eaglin, out of James Madison, and Paul Amata out of Lamar, a combined 28 pass breakups and 6 interceptions just in 2025 alone. And then obviously losing Jordan Seaton is major. So the offensive line, this is only the offensive tackles, by the way. This is not all the offensive linemen because they brought in some interior offensive linemen. They brought in some different things. Strictly for offensive tackles, one out of Cal, Leon Bell, Bo Hughley out of Georgia, that's SEC. Rutgers, that's Big Ten. Taj White, Javion Richardson out of Mizzou, that's 2 SEC level players. And then was Cal Big Ten or ACC? They're ACC and Big Ten. So that's Power 4 level hogs on the front side, and that's a great thing to see and something that you love to see if you're a Colorado fan. They're heading in the exact right direction. Now, as we finish this up, I did want to talk about some of the things that some other Colorado transfer players are doing. And then we're going to talk about the general state of the transfer portal as well. So first thing first, let's check in on our guy, safety Carter Stoudemire. Carter Stoudemire has committed and signed with Arkansas. So you love to see that because, I think, and not that I think, I know a lot of people have certain... They look at Coach Prime a certain way and they want him to handle the portal in a certain way. He wants them to be bitter. They want Deion Sanders to be bitter in the same way Lane Kiffin is. They want Deion Sanders to mess with the futures of these players in the same way Lane Kiffin does. Deion is just not like that. And that's why I try to, whenever these things happen and the transfer portal players go out there, it only just gives me an excuse to follow the careers of these young men, right? Because if Coach Prime thought you good enough to bring him into his home and bring him into his organization, I have to assume that you're a half decent human being as well as a pretty good football player. So maybe the fit just wasn't right. So shout out to Carter Stoudemire on his way to Arkansas. Now Jordan Seaton, it's a little different conversation. They've been killing Seaton, man. He was tweeting out the fact that his uncle apparently is his representation. He was talking about getting some extra visits. Early on he was linked to Texas and then he was linked to LSU. He has a visit to LSU tomorrow. He's wrapping up a visit with Miami and was at Mississippi State prior. He's ESPN's number 4 overall player in the transfer portal, right? You would think with the way that he transferred, as late as he transferred in the portal, you would think and hope that he would already have some money lined up. But the way that it looks like, I think this is even surprising some of the Miami and some of these other big suitors because they're just now getting these visits done. They're just now getting things in order. So as it stands right now, Jordan Seaton is still on some offers. It would be very funny if Lane Kiffin went ahead and won the Jordan Seaton sweepstakes, but very interesting to think about. Now, what you do like to see is that dog Ryan Staub. Come on, y'all know how we feel about Staubby around here. Ryan Staub is one of those lunch pail, heart of the team type guys that just shows up and does it big. So we love to see our guy Ryan Staub get his opportunity, possibly being a backup at Tennessee, maybe getting a good opportunity at Tennessee. I think he's a very talented player that was on a roster that just wasn't ready for it, and also was on a roster that really wasn't ready to commit to what they had got going on. So interesting update on a few ex-Colorado players heading to new places and spaces. Now, I do want to look at some statistics here from the transfer portal. A final transfer portal update, right? 10,965 NCAA football players entered the portal. 3,000, basically 4,000 from FBS, basically 2,700 from FCS, D2 and D3, another 4,000. Many have signed and are enrolled at new schools, but 6,671 NCAA football players are active and hoping to sign. This is crazy. Actually, let's go deeper in on this because I want to see all. So going in deep detail of it. So 40% of FBS portal guys are still looking. Ladies and gentlemen, not 40% of the portal, not 40% of 40% of FBS. So that's Power 5 or Power 4. Those are the big dogs. Those are your above FCS level. 1,600 people are still looking. 1,700 FCS are still looking, which is 64% of portal guys. And this makes a little more sense. 77% of D2 and D3 guys are still looking for it. If you're a smaller guy, you probably don't have the highest odds of doing this. But this is the reality of the situation. There's people who entered the transfer portal who were starters on their teams. I remember back in the day, this was only like a year or two ago, when I was obviously making transfer portal videos and talking about it. And Coach Prime said something interesting. He was like, a lot of times when when players transfer, they're transferring because they're not starting, because they're backups. That is not the same thing as today. There's just so much money in the opportunity that's being thrown at these young men that I know for a fact that there is a money number that they're trying to get, not necessarily a level of football that they're trying to get to. You feel what I'm saying? Because there's just no way that there are over almost 2,000 just FBS starters at D1 schools. I'm assuming really nice facilities that y'all had a place and y'all had a space, right? I'll have to assume at least half of those remaining were starters that are SOL. You know, some of them apparently are trying to ask to get back to their school. You're going to see that. You're going to see a lot of players begging to come back to their school because remember, there isn't two portals anymore. The thing about the last few years is that, okay, well, if you didn't make it, well, don't worry, because you got until spring when the portal reopens. Maybe some things changes. Maybe some portal or spring injuries happen, right? That was the big mover and shaker. You get through spring practice, you have some ACLs, you have some this, then you have that opportunity. That opportunity is no longer there. So there's people who are going to be stuck in la la land or stuck in no man's land for an entire year after starting for a football program. I think that is very crazy. And I thought this was interesting. I think this is actually basketball players in basketball. I really do think, as much as I'm a football guy, as much as we make fun of the transfer portal over here on the football side, it might be worse for the basketball side too, because they be talking about some crazy stuff when it comes to the different agents and situations.
Business, who the agents can be. We talked to so many random people that just started being an agent yesterday, and maybe they're the uncle to the single mom, who is my worst nightmare in recruiting. The uncle to the single mom that thought he could play and didn't get a chance because he had to go to work is my worst nightmare, because he's always talking about something that don't matter. But I think kids need to really rely on their high school coaches or their coaches where they are to try to help them, instead of getting some random. Now, there's good agents out there. I can't take that, but I can't take that away from them. I think we need to have some type of regulation on that, and then I think we need to have a salary cap.
So, I mean, at this point, it's boring to hear that, but hey, regulate all this money, force the agents to actually be, certified agents, and bring a salary cap. Who would think that? It's almost like Deion Sanders has been saying that for 3 years. It's almost like Nick Saban has been saying that for 4 years. It's almost like we've been saying that this is going to be an issue, and here we are. Nobody can keep anybody on a roster. But hey, that's college football for you, man. Y'all let me know how y'all feel down below in the comments. Like the video if you like, dislike if you don't, subscribe if you like football content. We'll see you next time.